Good morning. You too? Yeah, um, being a survival instructor in the suburbs. One of my neighbors just ran by. Hey, you two. Welcome back for another Wilderness Wednesday. One of the most common mistakes that I see when I'm working with beginning campers, hikers, bushcrafters, survivalists, they'll watch a video on bushcrafting and they'll look at the supply list. They'll look at the Amazon affiliate links at the bottom and they'll go out and they'll buy all that really cool stuff that they just saw in the video and then head straight out on the trail, get straight out into the woods. And they realize this stuff isn't plug and play. So what I'd like to demonstrate for you today is use your backyard. Use your backyard to take your gear, whatever it is you've just bought, and get out there and practice with it. Here's my tent. It's my REI Half Dome. You've heard me jokingly refer to it as the Wile E. Coyote Half Dome. I always have a footprint. Now you might think, what do I need to know about a footprint? Why do I need to practice that? Well, they do have an upside and a downside. They do have a side that should face up and a side that should face down. They mark it with a tag here. So go ahead and lay out your footprint. Here's my rain fly. I'm going to set that aside for now. And I'm going to take my tent. Make sure I have my stakes. And in a second, we're going to want to make sure that we have enough stakes in here. Companies do a great job of making sure that you have all that you need, but every once in a while they make a mistake, and there's nothing worse than being out on the trail and finding out you're short on tent stakes. So here, I've laid out my tent on top of my ground cloth. I'm ready now for my tent poles. I want to inspect them, make sure that none of them are broken. I want to inspect and check all of the elastic that's inside. That shock cordage will fray over time. A lot of people, when they have their tents the first time, the poles aren't oriented the way they expect them to. Make sure to practice and learn where they're going to go into the grommets. On this, I go through the grommet of the tent and in through the grommet of the footprint. Sometimes the tent poles are a little chaotic, a little unwieldy to work with. This is another great reason to practice. And again, don't do it just once, do it several times. Now, as I work through setting up this tent, I'm going to be checking cordage, I'm going to be looking for rips and tears, anything that's going to cause me trouble out on the trail, because if I need to repair it, it's much easier to do it here than it is out on the trail. While you're setting up your tent, you want to stake diagonally. And that'll give you a nice taut tent. It'll give it nice and tight so it sheds moisture well. So I'm going to stake diagonally. And while I'm doing this, I'm checking to see how it interacts with the footprint. So that if it's dark out, I know how they're going to lay out the best. I'm also inspecting that cordage or the straps wherever my stakes are going to go in. I'm checking to see if I have bent stakes. I'm also taking a look to learn what the tent is like. If this is my first time using the tent, I'm noticing, hey, up here on the top, there's some pockets, but these are not pockets for gear. These are door stuff pockets. I do have some pockets up here for diffused lighting. I have pockets down around the corners, so I'm learning my tent. Next, you might think that a fly fits onto a tent in a certain way, and then you're out there for your first time in the wilderness and you're trying to get that fly set up on top of it, and it's not orienting the way you expected it to. So this practice in the backyard helps you learn that, so that when it's dark or you're under that duress in the wilderness, it's just automatic in setting it up. You're already familiar with it. Once you have the fly up, you'll want to guy it out. Again, you're checking to make sure that you have enough stakes to do that. Most tents you're going to want to secure and guy off the corners first. On this tent, the fly secures to the tent with a buckle. Sometimes they just guy themselves, but this isn't where it stops. You can see here that the fly is drooping in and it's actually touching the inner wall. If I get condensation on this, it's going to leak in through that screening in there. So I want to make sure that this is guyed so that it's pulled away from that inner tent wall. If you're setting up your tent for practice the first time, or even after you've come back off of the trail, and while you're putting it up, you notice that it hasn't been zipped tight, go ahead and zip it up, tear it down, and then put it back up with those zippers being tight so that you learn the little intricacies of getting the tent up and taut so that it sheds water here. Some tents, when you do the vestibule, on this one, we have a guy line that comes out from the vestibule directly, and then back here you notice that there's one that comes off to hold for the door. Well, some of them, one might be before the other one is best. And this is where you're just going to practice and experiment. And sometimes you'll even read the instructions for the tent on how to put it up, and you find a better way in this practice. So this practice really is a big help in the backyard in learning all about your tent. It was in the backyard that I learned how to vent properly on my tent. Get inside the tent. Sit in it. Take a nap in it. In fact, if you're in a place where you can sleep out overnight in your backyard, do that in your tent. So you get to learn what it's like actually being in the tent without the pressure of being in the tent out in the wilderness when it's dark, and if you need to adjust something, you can't do it or it's more difficult. In this setup time, I'm going to inspect all of my guy lines. On this tent, it actually was missing a few guy lines when I first bought it. So I just got some paracord and I used the nuts that I've learned in other videos, like my taut line hitch and my overhand end loop, and I used that to repair some of the cordage that's on here. So take a look around your tent. Get it out in the backyard. Practice with it. So once you've practiced, you're ready to get out into the wilderness this weekend. Get out there. It's a great way to discover the supernatural that's in nature. And if you haven't done it, I'm going to ask a favor. Hey, would you please like this video and subscribe? I try to have one out every Wednesday for Wilderness Wednesday, and also the other playlist, My 5 to Survive. We'll see you for another Wilderness Wednesday.